Hello and welcome to a special episode of Brain in a Vat. We have James Helps on from goonwrite.com. James is a book cover designer. Some of you will know that I'm a science fiction author, and James has created many of my book covers over the years. I think we've been working together for 8 or 9 years. And he more recently created the book covers for our philosophy series called Conversations About Philosophy, and James did a fantastic job. So you can go and check those out, and we'll place links in the bio below, as well as links to James's website. But in the meantime, we're here to talk about AI-generated art and whether we should feel sorry for artists in this age of AI-generated art. James, would you like to start with a thought experiment?
I would indeed. What we're talking about here is somebody who's learnt the craft, learned how to paint really well, photorealistic paintings. They sell the paintings for 500-600 quid a time. And all of a sudden, AI's come. It's taken all of the pictures that had on the website. It's stolen the style. And now you can just type in, I would like a picture by X artist. And basically, those people are not very happy out there at the moment. Is it fair or is it not fair on them? Is the sort of thought experiment we're going to do today.
So I guess one of the important questions we have to ask is, how do AI-generated art machines work? So how do these engines produce the art they produce?
The heart of it, in terms of AI, you've got to really look at what it is. And to put it into simple terms, AI is a machine learning. It learns the structure of things. It learns the nature of things, and then stores the nature of things in its brain, for want of a better word. And then that brain gets interrogated. And in terms of it getting interrogated, it has its own sort of little argument in its own little brain, and then produces the results from that. How that exactly works is people who even create the database don't even know. So it's not a programmed machine that, like a computer game where if X happens, then B happens, then your little character walks across the screen. It's more interrogating a neural network in exactly the same way as our brain works. So I guess in terms of the way that AI is something like image generation, it's when and it's cannibalized basically all the images out on the internet and learn all those images. So that's which one it is.
So what's interesting is I think there's a perception that what's going on is that the AI is copying the work of other artists. But actually it seems that it's more akin to someone who studies under a great artist. You can imagine a great artist like Caravaggio has a range of students and they all learn how to paint like Caravaggio. But instead of just studying under Caravaggio, you pick all of the great artists, and not just in painting or photography, all sorts of different mediums. So AI can generate images that how would it look like if it was made out of clay or stone or out of ice? And it learns all of those things. And then what it does, as you say, is use the other images that it has in its mind, not just the styles, and push them together. So you can go and have, let's say, Malcolm Gladwell as an ice sculpture riding a bicycle through the Sahara Desert. A completely nonsensical, strange thing, and the AI can make it instantly. It seems a little bit like commissioning an artist to do something for you, an incredibly talented artist who's learned everywhere. Do you think that the AI itself is an artist, or do you think that the person who's putting in the prompt is the artist?
Neither. I think in your example, I guess I would say if there's no thought process behind Malcolm Gladwell as an ice sculpture going through the desert on a bike, that you said it was nonsensical, then there isn't an artist involved in that particular situation. That's a different process that's happening. It's not art. Now, if earlier today, this afternoon, you were thinking about this podcast and then you were, that's a really good image in my brain and I want to express that on the podcast, and it's an expression of your feelings and your thoughts, then it would be art. But I think for the most part, that's not what people are. I would say 99% of people are using it, and that's not what they're using it for. They're not using it for art. There might be people who are using it for commercial reasons as I do with book covers, which I wouldn't say that there's much art involved in that. There's a lot of people just using it for fun. There's a lot of people using it for their Dungeons and Dragons sessions. One thing that happens every day with me on Midjourney is that I go and I rank images. So if I rank images for half an hour each day, it means I get a free hour. So I'm looking at what people are creating. I've probably seen the most broad cross-section of what's being created just randomly. You look at it and there's a lot of Batman on there, that kind of thing. I want to know what Batman would look like skiing in the Alps. Just people's curiosity, I think, more than artistic impulse.
So do you think that's different from what artists do? So is the difference that the artist thinks carefully about what they want to create and they're more methodical, whereas maybe what you're saying here is it's either more commercial or playful? Is that really the distinction?
Yeah, I think a very simple way that I would look at, is it art or are you just creating something, is who you're making it for. If you make who you're making it for to make happy, if you're making it to make other people happy, if you're making something to make other people happy or to sell it, I wouldn't say it's generally. If you're doing something to satisfy your own curiosity or to express your own ideas, then I would say it's just on a really base, simple level. I mean, in terms of my book covers, I make pre-made book covers. And I would say I do have a very clear breakdown of maybe 90% of my pre-made covers are made to make other people happy. When they're happy to give me money and I can sell covers. I would say there's still 10% that I just make for my own amusement. Where I go, that's quite a cool picture. It's never going to sell as a book cover. I'm just going to put it on my website. So there is, and I think in people as well, I think there's people do want to do things to make other people happy, but there's 10% that they do want to express themselves as well. So I think that's probably like a fair breakdown of how people are used it.
So that's an interesting account of art. We can imagine, let's say, traditional craftspeople who are working in painting or sculpting, whatever it is. And we can imagine someone who is trying to express their soul and picks the medium of painting and produces this particular painting. And someone else who says, I just want to make money. That's all I want to do. And they produce a painting. And then a third party observer comes in and they look at the two products and they go, they're indistinguishable to me. And they are both either treated as art or both treated as non-art. And the question would be, does it matter what internal states are in the creator's mind? In other words, are they doing this for profit or are they doing this for self-expression? Or is it a matter of how the objects are treated in the world? So one account of art is that it's not about the artist, it's a kind of institutional thing. If the art community treats it as a work of art, if it's recognized as a work of art, if it's put up in galleries and venerated, then it is a work of art. The other accounts are, no, it very much does depend on the intention of that creator. And you can imagine Picasso, everybody recognizes as an artist, producing a series of works that he doesn't consider art, but mere preparations for an ultimate work. Someone else could pick up this and go, oh, it's a Picasso, it's touched by the artist, it's a great work of art. And he says, no, that's not what I was intending to do. That stuff is just preparatory work. It's the offcuts before I made the real work. And we can imagine something that with the AI artist, where the person says, I want to try and express myself. I have this intention to create art, and I'm going to go through a series of iterations until eventually I have the final product. Photographers have been doing this for years. You shoot a number of images, you pick the best one, you say, that's the photograph, that's the work of art. All the other stuff doesn't really matter. And so if we think that these parallels are present in traditional art making and in AI, then it seems like someone could use the AI to produce art, genuine art in the high art sense that you want it to make it, right?
I completely agree that this idea that is it art, is it not art, is irrelevant, because actually I'd say the photography example is a really good example of that. That yeah, you'll take thousands of images and you'll pick one where you're trying to express the thing you want to express. And it is just a tool, and the tool is irrelevant to what it is. It's that you said the thing about Picasso and all these iterations before he got to the point, but then people go, oh, well, I've got a Picasso sketch, I've got a Picasso piece, work of art. You have the other end of the scale as well, where you have someone like Damien Hirst. And I had a friend who actually worked in Damien Hirst's factory. So Damien Hirst doesn't do any of the work. And you have a bunch of quite talented artists that just work on a daily basis, churning his stuff out. And then is it art because it's been touched by Damien Hirst. And whether or not you like Damien Hirst's artwork, the funny thing with that story is the fact that if you went and worked with Damien Hirst would buy your artwork. If you're an artist, he'd just go, no, buy that, no, 500. He'd pay you a decent daily wage. But he'd go, like, if you produce it, he'd go, right, I'll buy it off you, like 500 quid. So he collected all the artwork of all the artists that worked in his factory because he had stupid money. So it was kind of that, and that in itself was an interesting concept of just, I'm going to use you as labor, but then I'm going to validate your artwork, even though you're working on my artwork that I've never touched. So I think this idea of, yeah, what is art is, it's something people can argue about forever, inside out, and people will have different definitions, but I would definitely say you can make art with AI.
Then an interesting question is, if you can make art with AI, can the AI make art? So in your example with Damien Hirst, you've got Damien Hirst directing this process, and that seems similar to you sitting down on the computer and putting in the prompt. And then you press generate or create, and the AI goes and does its thing, just like these artists in Damien Hirst's factory go out and do their thing. The question is, are they the artists, or is Damien Hirst the artist? So is it the AI that should be responsible for being called the artist rather than you?
No, because the people who work in the factory just told to do little dots on the pictures if he's doing his dot pictures or whatever. Oh, your job today is allowed insects in the cabinet, like Damien palaver. But it's not his factory workers come in on the morning and go, oh, I've got an idea. We should do little squares to do it in terms of it, rather than like circles. He's going to go, you're not working for me. It's my idea. It's the dots we're doing, not the squares or whatever. So it is Debbie, the person who's prompting the AI and is the artist. It doesn't matter what the tool is. So those people are just tools in his vision of what he wants to do, in the same way as the AI is. I think the more interesting thing is with Midjourney, there's certain prompts that can use. There's a parameter called chaos. I don't know if you've played with Midjourney and played with chaos, but you can be very specific about what you want. Then you go, oh, I'll have chaos turned up to 99, which is the maximum you can have for chaos. And then what you're saying to it is, I've given you areas, I've given you cues in neurological terms, or area of information, and they're stored in a neural network. They're stored in a vector, where so they're stored in a 3D space, if you can imagine it. So when you're picking this concept here and this concept here, like a ball and the sky, it'll go, oh, I can connect those two ideas quite closely, because there's lots of times I've seen pictures of balls in the sky. It could be a cricket ball, it could be a football. And so they're stored in that area. So ball can be like a cloud, if you will, of different types of balls. Oh, but something more on the outside of that might be like fancy dress ball, still a ball, but it's a ball nonetheless. But when it associates sky with ball, it's going to think, yeah, it's not going to be a pool ball. It's more likely to be a football or a rugby ball or a cricket ball in the air. So what happens is when you prompt it and you say, chaos 99, give me chaos 99, what you're doing is you're saying, oh, maybe spread yourself out to the very edges of your understanding of that concept. So you might get a fancy dress ball at like chaos 50, but chaos 99, it might have even spread into boomerangs or meringues, or so then you get these chaos at work as well. And that to me it's something I've played with quite a lot, because I like to find the edges of when things start to go strange. I like discordant things that make me happy. When you turn into us that chaos, I think that's a little bit more, oh, are you still the artist, when you're giving it more free rein.
So I really like the Damien Hirst case that you give. And I think a lot of people look at Damien Hirst and they have two reactions. The one is, you say, you've got a brilliant mind who's come up with unique work and he's told other people how to do the practice of it, and they're being instructed. Other people say, no, real artists need to get their hands dirty. It's the person who is doing the work, doing the cutting or doing the painting, and Hirst is a charlatan. So you have this sort of division about the way he's viewed. But if we take the view that really a lot of the artist's work is that conceptual work and that the practice of it could be done by others, then AI seems like this incredible tool. And the case you give of the Chaos 99, and by the way, that just seems like such a cool band name, is Hirst walks into the factory and he says, okay, guys, do whatever you like today. I trust you. It's like that. And at that juncture, then we say, is it Hirst who has called for the chaos, who has demanded chaos from his underlings, or has he given them freedom? And the freedom is what's coming out, and then it's their work. And that's such a nice line. It's so difficult to work out which way have we gone here. Has the AI been unleashed, or have we instructed it to do a certain kind of thing?
Yeah, but then it's still, you still, with chaos, you're still putting sort of certain parameters around that. It's still just within that sort of bubble in a way. But you can tell Midjourney, you can say, give me a random image. It will just give you a random image. Yeah, that's interesting. I think the main thing we're looking at what AI is doing is that at every single point of where we're at, and since I've started playing with it for the last 6 months, every single precise moment that you're in every month is just where you're at. And the interesting thing with that is where we're at 6 months since July, more precise, it hits the prompts better, it's clearer, it gives better results. So that's obviously the way that they want it to go. That's the training of it. The training of it is for it to be closer to your ideas. So it's easier for you to tell it something for it to get it right. So that's the way it's going. So when you could be, but then at the same time, the sort of that veers in two directions with a question of art, because on one side it's getting close. If you're super specific about something, it will get it right. But if you're super ambiguous, it will give you just a good picture. Now, before it would give you a good picture, I've got on, I'm just giving you any old tap. So there's an interesting thing where it's kind of forking off in two directions. But people that want to use it simply, then it is becoming the artist. But it's empowering the artists to be more precise of what they actually want as well. So it's kind of interesting that it's going in both directions, or at least Midjourney is. And every week I listen to David Holtz on Office Hours. He chats about what they're working on every week, and it's quite interesting, his sort of philosophy of that's the direction he wants to go. And so I think it's not one thing or the other in terms of the artist's control.
So far, we've discussed a lot around the definition of art and who's the artist. Is it the machine? Is it the person putting in the prompt into the AI generator? And we've also discussed the definition of art. What I'm interested now is just focusing on the morality or the ethics involved. A lot of people have these ethical qualms about AI art, and so much so that a lot of people refuse to read books that have images drawn in them by AI art, or they won't buy books that have AI generated book covers if they know about it, or they review bomb those books. What is this incredible dislike for AI art about?
I think, firstly, I would say that's driven a lot by clickbait. I would say the article, it's a really good controversy. So you get a lot of articles. So, and in this polemic social media world, people like to jump on one side or another. And I would say with my experience it's from people I work for, it's about 75-25. I've lost clients and I'm like, okay, I know. But a lot of people see the light of the fact that it's coming and you can't stop it. The ethical dilemma of that is a completely different discussion. If you want to look at that properly, that's something to be looked at. But one of the sort of feelings that I get is that it seems very, so you have big authors that earn a lot of money, but have enough money to pay artists to go away and do a £600-700 cover. But still at the same time, that artist will be using stock images It's not as if the people that produce stock images are getting paid particularly well in the age of things like Shutterstock. They get pennies per image. So you have this strange sort of situation that it comes down to. It seems like a very sort of middle-class reaction. Oh, I've got enough disposable income to pay lots of money for an artist. But then at the other end of the scale, you have people who've written books that might only get read by the mum, their auntie, and a few friends, and maybe get 4 reviews. But they want it to look nice, right? So they want to spend $30, $40 on a cover. Why did that to spend £600 when? So I think there's quite a middle pass to that sort of argument in terms of my industry.
So it seems there's the classic Luddite argument, where the Luddites were used to working on hand looms. Along comes the Industrial Revolution, and you have these steam-powered looms. They're that much quicker. And people say, how dare you have this technological innovation? You're going to make me out of work. And so they smash the machines, right? And it seems like that's the one impulse, is that, oh, the poor artists who've been doing this stuff, they're going to be shortchanged by those that work in AI. The other one might be a bit more personal, which is someone has developed a style that's unique, and the AI can then go and emulate that style and produce stuff that looks akin to the work of that artist. And they might say, I had to spend an enormous amount of time coming up with, let's say, surrealism. And now this AI can generate stuff that looks like it was made by me. And that's not right. You've stolen from me. I should have a right to this style that I spent many years cultivating, learning from all these other things and simulating it and creating my own unique voice. How dare this AI come? Shouldn't I be entitled to some kind of revenue out of it? Shouldn't it pay me a royalty? Shouldn't it be disallowed from using my work? Shouldn't I be able to stop it from copying me or my style?
No, tough. It's like, my attitude is tough. There's a fantastic quote that I love from the Billion Basquiat film. And I don't know if you've seen the film before, but Basquiat's just starting to get a little bit more popular as an artist. And there's a bit where they're playing basketball, and his friend says to him, oh, you don't want to get famous though, because the moment you get famous, then people like your style. And when they like your style, you want to make something new. Then you suck it, you go away and you make something new. They're not going to like you anymore. In fact, they're going to be angry with you. So you've just got to continue making the same stuff the moment you become famous. And I think that's just commerce, isn't it? It's like if you turn around, you can't turn around as an artist and go, oh, somebody's copied like some great idea I had. Because it's so good, you had a great idea, it's so good that people want to copy it. But if it's commercially enough to be copied by other people, then surely you've made coin on it, because people are already copying off it to try and get somebody in their pocket as well, generally. They're not doing it out of an artistic endeavor. They're doing it for purely financial reasons. So if you were that popular, you must have already made your coin anyway. You must have. So if you've made your coin already, experiment with some of the style. Get on with something else. If you're big enough to be copied, then you've made your money, is my attitude. Is it awful to spend 20 years cultivating the style and then somebody come in and steal that? I'm not entirely sure that you have a right to that much luxury to be actually being able to spend 20 years to cultivate that style, to actually complain about it, because it's not like you're working in a factory and then a robot comes along until you've had a nice life to be able to go to art school to cultivate your style. Just in general terms, there's a whole world out there, different socioeconomic backgrounds, but to be able to develop I'm just going to work on paintings of dragons every day until I get really good at it for like 10 years. That's some sort of touch life you've got there.
The artist could say, hold on, in a world without AI art, my style would survive a lot longer as a unique product. So it would take other artists a lot longer to learn what I'm doing, to emulate it. They'd have to study me. But someone sits in front of Midjourney and just puts in a prompt, and 10 seconds later, boom, my work is reproduced. It seems it's no longer worth my time to sit and become an artist.
Yeah, but see, I think it's really easy to confuse the idea with artist and just an artisan. Being good at being able to craft something, it is a skill. Making a nice loaf of bread, it might vary up. There's different places I can go for bread. Some bread's a little bit nicer, a little bit more expensive. But that might have been a family, 3 generations who learned to make really good bread. So to be able to paint a certain way, it's just an art, it's artisan work. It's not the work of an artist to me. So to claim, oh, somebody's stealing my art or my artistic thing just seems, and so somebody comes up with a really good song, all the pop songs are like that, pop song after that. It's just the way that the world works. Things are created. If it's popular, people copy off it and try and make money off it. It's no different. Just because the machines speeded up that process doesn't mean that you suddenly got some sort of God-given right because you spent a lot of time learning your craft.
So a friend of mine is a novelist, and he had a different objection to it. He said that other kinds of AI which are producing text have access to his work, and they're able to use his words, his characters, and he's not really writing for the money. He's writing because he sees it as a beautiful exercise. And he says his sacred stuff is being intermingled with other distasteful things. And so he's not worried about someone making a dime off his work. He's saying you're taking something pure and you are infusing it with horrible, bad ideas. You can imagine he writes a character and someone else uses that character to write white supremacist hate fiction. And he says, you've taken something that was important to me and now you've sullied it, and it makes me not want to write anymore. And I wonder if that kind of objection is different to the commercial objections where we go, you've had a nice life, you're a middle-class person who went to art school, suck it up. Versus the guy who says, I'm not doing it for the money, I'm doing it for the love, and now my whole enterprise is being sullied.
I think the question there is, has he published his books on Amazon?
Yes.
But did he read the terms and conditions?
So there might be a sense in which you've waived your rights. Sorry, other people could do this, and then it's, as you said, tough in that sense. I wonder if it's the kind of thing where we say it's not the kind of right you could waive. Or you shouldn't, even if you signed it away, Amazon should protect you.
I think I had this really interesting chat. It was maybe about 15 years ago. I was at a thing called Oil for the New Millennium, it was a get-together of all the people, the tracker people. So you have like when Torrent was really big, with all the trackers, and everybody was there. There was only about 40 of us, 50 of us. There's a few undercover people there, which was quite funny. But I had this kind of discussion with Broker from Pirate Bay, and it was a really interesting intellectual discussion about the internet. And Broker's idea, see, oil for the 21st century comes from a statement that John Paul Getty, whoever's the Getty guy, they're all called John Paul, I think. Obviously, Getty Images, and they were like big things. And he said, yes, digital assets are going to be oil for the 21st century. That was his statement. So that's why they ironically called it oil for the 21st century. But he was saying that because things are digital, then what he wanted to do, his idea, and the idea of the pirate pie, was that not all culture is should be owned by everybody. The pirate bit was originally set up as an idea, just going, no, nobody should own anything if it's digital. It's that those days should be over. We should live in a world that's more utopian in terms of ideas that freely shared amongst everybody else. Now, when you think of it in those terms, your friend came saying, "Oh, if my characters remind me of some white supremacist thing or what have you." Though I'm a bit of a white supremacist, you probably have quite a nice friend. They probably never. I can understand the hypotheticalizing that, but in reality, that probably won't happen. But something's out there. It's out there. It's like most people, I don't know if you've ever been on fanfiction.com or is it fanfiction.net. Anything that's big's been completely sullied and changed and always will be changed by people. That's just the nature of culture. There's like ideas are owned. Once an idea is out in the open, it's owned by everybody. It's a common space. So this idea of intellectual property, you've got intellectual property, or I should earn money from something. But you've got this idea of idea space. Once something's in that idea space, then there is no thing of that. It's like, say, the Picasso paints the Halls of Avignon, and everybody goes, it's rubbish. But give it a couple of years and everybody's doing cubism. Oh, yeah, different angles, different times. The idea becomes part of idea space. And that sense of understanding that things exist in idea space is just the way things are. And AI's come along. And it's gonna cannibalize everything that exists in idea space. Why do you think it wouldn't? Like, or how could it not, in a way? Like, it's, if you want it to understand stuff, you've got to feed them some food to get it going. Do you know what I mean?
That's an interesting question, whether you need to give consent for it to learn from your stuff in order for that learning to be ethical. So you could argue that I didn't consent for it to read my books. I didn't consent for it to view my art that I generated to put into its database to learn from. And insofar as there's a programmer out there who's giving free rein to the AI machine to go and learn from all these different pieces of text and all these different pieces of art without checking first whether those artists are okay with it, then you could say that person who's programming the AI that way has done something wrong.
No, you can't. I would strongly disagree with that, because the moment that you put something out there, it's out there. You can't say, like a really good example is my friend used to have a t-shirt shop. And I used to go down and visit him when he had a bench outside, a little drinking bench. I'd finish work, go sit down with him, drink a bottle of wine together, talk rubbish. But you'd have people that come along, younger people, with a phone. Oh, that's a great t-shirt. I want to take a photo. Can you move out the way? I want to take the fact that he had a t-shirt. And I was always annoyed because he's sure, okay, I can't move out the way and stuff. But I'm like, they never bought his t-shirts and he never got any money out of it. It was just, it's something cool to put on my Instagram feed. And it's like, his attitude was that it's my shop's visible to the world. So I can't stop them from doing that because I've already put it out in the world. And I think it's exactly the same. The problem, so from an ethical point of view, the moment you put some out in the world, how can you stop that? The problem is that it's hyper learning. It's turboed version of taking something and copying it, like copying the style. And that's taking you 20 years to learn how to paint special apples, and then it learns how to do special apples in 6 months, and you're annoyed. But it's no different than somebody else going to learn how to paint these special apples. Once it's out there, it's out there.
But I want to push you on this, because you make your living from digital assets, right? So you sell covers. Suppose I hack into your computer and I take all of your covers and I then go and sell them. Surely you would say I've done something wrong. Now you're saying, assume that's the case, right? I assume you'd agree that I've done something wrong and maybe should be prosecuted for it.
Well, you'd be surprised. You would actually be surprised. It happens. So I've had people in the past see that I'm popular because I've got a certain renown, and they take images of my website, then they put it on a website, sell it for more expensive, and then come to me for the covers. And I'm like, okay, whatever. You paid the price I brought up for. If somebody stopped, you can't actually steal. You couldn't steal my covers anywhere. It would be pretty impossible, because the fonts I've built over the last 30 years of my working career is pretty varied. So you might get it, that font doesn't work on it. And I'm using a really old piece of software as well that you can't even get to look at money anymore. It's having a new version, the files won't open properly. But if somebody stole something that I made, well, can put it in a different way. At a certain point, I'm pretty sure that AI will be able to analyze all my covers and produce book covers the same as me. Okay, so when that happens, how do I feel about it? That's probably a better question. What am I going to do? Scream at clouds? Shake my fist at God? The inevitability of that is something you should prepare yourself for. Quite simply, it's the immovable future coming at you. And to me, it shocked me. I knew it was coming. I've been known it's coming for most of my adult life. But it's shocked me how fast it is coming at us. But it's...
So what's interesting is the way people have traditionally conceived of technology is that it will remove unskilled labor. Instead of having someone packing boxes, we'll have a robot that does that. And people haven't thought of the idea of it doing this traditionally skilled intellectual work. The industry that has gotten a fair amount of attention that is next in the firing line is my industry. I work as a lawyer, and there is a guy who has put out a challenge saying any lawyer who's appearing in the American Supreme Court, put in a little earpiece and their AI will feed you what to say. And if you take them up on it, they'll pay you $1 million. At the moment, it's being used for low-level things like fighting traffic fines. But the idea is that you think you're special, having studied law for so long. You can draw all these interesting connections between different legal principles and different fact sets. Well, wait until you see what AI can do, and you guys are going to be run out of business. And there's some sense in which no one's really going to be crying much for the lawyers. They're like, as long as I can get my dispute resolved, that's the thing that matters to me. And maybe people ought not to be crying for the artists, that the AI is going to come in, it's going to do incredible things, stuff that no one else has conceived of before. And maybe it's a better world for the consumers. Everyone will enjoy it more. And Jason, being the arch utilitarian, who's done a good job of putting forward a rights-based account thus far, is going to say, let's just count up the amount of pleasure that's generated. Think how many people are going to have such a wonderful time enjoying these works that are created by the AI. And isn't that pleasure something that we should be celebrating?
Well, yeah, I think the whole thing is if you think you say, definitely not say everything. So at a certain level, you don't like. I think there's been a lot of low-level stuff that's probably gone by the by as well. So you mentioned lawyers, but doctors, how much surgery is done? Guided surgery is done now. Everybody that like I've had a friend who had a heart procedure. I've had a friend that just had his gallbladder. I'm getting to that age where my friends are all falling apart. Yeah, gallbladder taken out in a week, and it's okay. And my mum had a lung cancer, had a part of the lung taken out. All keyhole surgery, all guided robots, all that's AI happening in real time in miniature form, and you have all these. You do have all these things that, yeah, that's just 20 years time, everything will be gone. So you've just got universal basic income. That's got to be something in the pipeline. It's one reason why I think you have a lot of people stealing a lot of money in the world at the moment, trying to stockpile for the coming lack of labour situation. A lot of people in Davos, I can imagine, have been talking about this for a number of years, of how fast AI is going to drop and what does that mean. One thing that I find super interesting is how well AlphaCode did this year. So AlphaCode is DeepMind's version of its coding algorithm. So it's an AI that can just do the code. So, code in Python, whatever language, and just write code. And it won, I think it won 54% of the challenges against human beings. So it's already slightly better than human being programmers, which is a really strange concept when you think about it. Because once it can code a lot better in faster time, then things will change a lot faster as well. Is how microchips. You have a better computer, so you design a better computer, to design a better computer, to design a better computer, to design a better computer. So it's the exponential increase until you hit the sort of semiconductor level. I think one of the interesting things that I saw, which was really strange, is I play computer games. Well, it's approaching 50, but I like to play computer games, have good fun on a night rather than watching TV. And NVIDIA, who made the graphics cards, brought out DLSS 3. And it was a computer game I ran. I could only run it at HD before. Nice graphics and stuff, but only HD. When they brought that driver out, which was an AI driver, on the same hardware, it allowed me to run it at 4K. Same graphics. And that was just, they would create a bit of AI code that makes the hardware 4 times as good as. And how can they do that? And that, you can see most people, when you look into it, will just go, it looks a bit better. But a lot of things I think are happening behind the scenes of rapid improvement. But we're all going to be out of the job.
It's a very interesting future. One view is that there's no limit to the progress that AI can make, and it's just going to advance exponentially until it's more sophisticated than humans. And then, we're all out of every possible job, and AI takes over, and we just have to live on a universal basic income. But the other view is that the growth will cap. And one reason for thinking that is that if you look at the advances in chips, there was this incredible exponential improvement in chips through the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and stopped. They just couldn't create conductors and superconductors small enough anymore to keep that exponential growth going. And although there have been improvements, if you have a look at the speed of computers, they certainly haven't increased exponentially like they did in decades past. Perhaps we're going to hit some sort of cap here as well. There's just a limit to how smart AI can be, and it will do certain things as well or better than people. Mark will be out of a job, lawyers are out, cover designers are out, but certain things still humans might be able to do better.
Let me something. I think the interesting thing is on that film is it called Her with Joaquin Phoenix, where he falls in love with the AI operating system he gets. Is it called Her or She or something like that? His job was writing romantic letters for people to send to other people. And I always thought, I was like, chef's kiss, perfect job for a character in a sort of near future film where AI is present, because it makes sense. So I think there will also you have this interesting thing where you've seen a massive resurgence in vinyl. So there's a desire for things that are still real, like real artifacts. I kind of make music, and I do love music, and I've got loads of musician friends. So I've kind of quite a close take on that whole sort of situation. Spotify has, to a certain extent, killed music in the same way as a lot of other. So Spotify are just taking what's popular, creating stupid playlists, and who work out, and then they'll just work out what's the perfect music by interrogating that with AI. Go and get somebody to make it in a studio for £100 a track, and then just put it on there and just flood the system with all this sort of junk that people just accept. But at the same time, with music, you've got it going in the other direction as well. I could go, oh no, actually, I like the actual vinyls and the thing that I own, to the point where you have like Adele re-releasing all her albums again on vinyl, and that's clogging up all of the vinyl pressing plants in the whole of the world. So independent artists can't put out vinyl. So you have this weird thing where it's a good case in point where you have something that's being destroyed by technology, how people react to that as well.
Yeah, so I like the idea of thinking about what political structure you'd want in place in a world where AI can solve a lot of problems. And you've both talked about the idea of a universal basic income, which is this libertarian idea that work is bad and it would be best for us if none of us worked and it could be done by machines. We would then have enough money to lead the lives that we want to live. So instead of toiling away in the factory, you can do the thing that you want. And what's interesting, of course, is it seems like the AI is doing the thing that we want. All the interesting, creative, beautiful work that people are supposed to be doing with their time and with their universal basic income is being done by others. And so then if there's nothing left to do, what's the purpose of the life? It seems you give the brilliant case of Her, where you could fall in love with the AI, that the AI knows every romantic trick in the book. It can pull your heartstrings in just the right way, customized just to you. It's going to beat any human lover. We can imagine combining it with a really impressive 3D printed robotic body that's got the feel of flesh, that you don't have to deal with all the messiness of a real human being. We can have the perfect match for you, that really everyone can have their own customizable soulmate. The AI can learn everything about you and be your perfect match, whatever it is that you need. And then we start to wonder, what's the point of humanity? Would it be okay if we all just died out? It's the one generation of falling in love with the robots. There won't be any more people. And the AIs just persist. Maybe that would be a better world.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, we are going to be quite stuck by the romantic sense of life. And maybe people will develop more romantic sense of life. And don't mean as in more romantic look, but just like a more romantic way to look at sort of interpersonal relationships. Maybe people don't have time. Like there was a moment in what my friend's life, in his history, where he'd had a kid. The kid's now like 23, 24, something like that. When the kid was about 4, they'd split up. And my friend he didn't have a job at the time, but the mother of his child, his sort of ex-partner, she had a really good job, so he was looking after the kid. And he just said he remembered one day going to the park and he was quite like a bit down, a bit upset. And his kid ran to go, I want to go play on the swings. And the kid was so excited, he just started running, then just suddenly tripped and fell over flat on his face. And my mates just started bursting out laughing, just going, my life might be terrible, but that's funny watching my son fall off. Because you just fall over in the most comedic way. And I guess to be able to watch people fall over in a comedic way, if the robots take over, we'll still be able to laugh at each other. I think that's the point. That's what I'm looking at anyway.
James, thank you so much for being on the show. And it's a fascinating topic. I think that it would be an interesting poll for our guests to find out how many of them think they're going to be out of jobs in 20 years, all of them, and every possible job in 20 years, and how many people think they still will have something. I think we all want to think we have something that's unique to us that the AI can't reproduce. But it'll be an interesting future. And thank you very much for your time and for being on the show. And for anyone who's listening to the show who is a writer and is thinking of writing a book or has written books, James's covers are fantastic. I can vouch for them. They're excellent. So go on to goonwrite.com and have a look at James's work.